Hello, my name is Austin Ogilvy, and welcome to my Archivist presentation. Now, not a lot of people know what an archivist is or what they do, but they are basically curators of human history, and they are very important and are essential to what a museum of any kind uses and how it operates. What is an archivist? An archivist appraises, edits, and keeps guard of permanent records. There are many different types. You got conservators, uh, managers, accountants and photographers, curators and librarians. There are many. For example, the photographer, kind of obvious as to what the title suggests. Uh, they take photos of the content that is, if they can't get a piece out because it's extremely fragile, they would take a picture of it, blow it up enough so you wouldn't notice it that it's a photo. And then, you got records managers who, they record and manage what's on file. So an archivist creates exhibits, maintains databases, and creates heritage research files. So, for example, you got an archivist who, let's say, is doing something on ancient Egypt. They will create an exhibit, make a database for the exhibit so if anything gets lost or is broken down, they can check it off to make sure that everything's okay and so on. Now, many people, including me, because I really didn't know what an archivist really is. So I looked into it and noticed that it's primarily, someone who, a museum will hire to, you know, give tours, and including in those tours would be stuff about the what do you- about the piece that's in the exhibit. So with that, they can keep keep things updated. I think it's a very cool job, and I definitely believe that they are underappreciated because without an archivist, museums as we know would not be what they exist today. So a typical salary, well, no, let's see, there are four different types of jobs that an archivist can do. You got a library tech, curator, museum tech, and historian. And a librarian technician makes $56,170. And to get that job, you need a master's degree in library science. A curator earns $51,280. You need a master's in art history. A museum technician uh, gets $39,940. And to get that, you need a bachelor's degree in museum studies. And a historian earns $55,870, and you need a master's degree or a Ph.D. in history or related field. Now, to get these jobs and to obviously get a master's degree, you got to go through undergraduate and graduate school. So that's at least like 8 years of hardcore schooling. But I mean, if you looking at these salaries, you're obviously earning a good amount of money, and a lot of the jobs that are offered are full-time positions, so you're working, 365, almost 360, 365 days a year, and they're looking for the best types of people to do these jobs. They don't want someone who, doesn't know their stuff, so that's why they're looking for these types of degrees, most of these people definitely know what they're talking about. I mean, I'm pretty sure they can tell you the history of something without even having to look at notes. Now, the job outlook for an archivist is extremely good, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Stats. They are expected to go through 2024, and it's projected to grow 14% from 2016 to 2026. Employment of curators is expected to grow from 2016 to 2026, along with technicians and conservators. Like I mentioned, to get a job in this field is very difficult. You need a master's and an internship, and even volunteer to have the best prospects of getting a job. And there's a lot of competition because a lot of people are qualified who are looking for this type of work. It is a very big field. I read in an article that like there are 60,000 archivists throughout the world, so it's an important job, and this type of work will always be needed to tell the history of the world. So, again, I mentioned this in a few slides. You need a master's degree in history, library science, archival science, and records management. You also need analytical skills as well as organization skills and interpersonal skills and reading comprehension. An example for interpersonal skills, you're communicating with the public, so you obviously want to be able to talk clearly and be able to tell people the information that they're looking for and have good reading comprehension, because back then words were a lot different. Especially if you're learning something about Old English, you definitely want to know how to pronounce Old English so you don't look confused. Employers also expect you to be familiar with data protection and freedom of information legislation, and you are also required to work with a team, have computer literacy, because most of this stuff is now getting transferred to the digital realm. But it is also staying analog, because combining all these old documents onto a computer takes massive amounts of time. You also need exceptional written and communication skills and presentation skills. I mean, really, this job wants you to be almost perfect. You need to know a lot to get into this job. It's not something you can, just wing. I know a lot of professions nowadays don't do that, and even they've never done that. They want the best people. Now, depending on the size of the institution and position you hold, you may have a desk or you work with the public. So let's say, a museum, you're offering tour guides all day. It's a full-time position, so you're going to be, every hour, every 2 hours, you're going to be giving tour guides to a group of people who want to learn, and you are expected to tell them that information if they want to learn. People who work in the museum, they restore and set up exhibits. They work with heavy containers, and you also may have to lift heavy objects and climb ladders. I'll use an example of setting up an exhibit. In the Field Museum in Chicago, there's a ancient Egypt section. So, someone who's good in that area will, set up the exhibits, clean them, make sure they look nice and presentable. You don't want a not you want to have a nice area. You want people to, say, wow, this place is really well kept, and you want to, if something is dirty, they got to clean it and make it look nice. And an example of restoring, if a papyrus scroll has been out for 2 years, they'll switch something that hasn't been put out for a while. They got to keep things looking nice and new and preserved because back then, a lot of stuff probably didn't last long, and of course, fires were a big deal. So these people are basically keeping human history intact. So here are some fun facts. You get dirty because you're primarily dealing with, dirty things. You have to explain to people what you do constantly because a lot of people don't really know what an archivist is. There's a lot of paper involved. You get to wear white gloves. Who doesn't love that? And kind of the next point is tied in with lots of paper. Most archivists deal with paper and not records on the computer because they'd have to go through tons of records and they'd have to, switch between, you know, scanning and putting them on, scanning, putting them on, scanning, putting them on the computer. It wastes time. And the type of work that these people are doing, you don't want to waste time. And then here's my works cited list, and that is my presentation on archivists. They are an extremely important to learning history, preserving history, and teaching the next generation what the history of the world is like. They are so important. We take them for granted. And I think this job is fantastic for any type of history buff. And I really hope you enjoyed listening to my presentation. My name is Austin Ogilvy. Thank you.